She didn't scream because of pain. She screamed because of what was growing inside her, and it was never meant to be born. In a forgotten lab, buried beneath rust and silence, a warrior alien, powerful, once unbreakable, opened her eyes to agony. Her skin shimmered with unnatural hues. Her breath stuttered. Her body convulsed as something within her began to stir. The man who stood before her, a former mercenary, once feared across 3 systems, could only watch helpless. He had saved her from the scientists, but not in time, because deep inside her, they had left something behind. Not a child, not a parasite, a new life, learning how to awaken. She had no idea how long she'd been unconscious. When her eyes finally opened, there was no sterile white ceiling, no cold, sterile lights, no boots echoing against laboratory floors. Only rusted sheet metal above her, flickering bulbs, and the stale stench of burned metal in the air. She lay on a steel table, skin pale, lips cracked, breath ragged. Her abdomen was distended, swollen unnaturally. Something under her skin twitched, shifted, as if clawing to break free. And still, she didn't scream. Not yet. I was the one who got her out. Not out of some noble cause, but because of a look. That moment when they injected her with whatever that was, I stood behind the observation glass. And she looked at me, not with fear, not with anger, just emptiness, as if she had already seen how the world would end. I remember the feel of the door handle, the stench of blood, the sound of bullets behind us as I carried her out. Now she lay here, in this half-collapsed warehouse, trembling like a leaf caught in a storm. I stepped closer, reached out to touch her shoulder, and that's when she sat up and screamed. Not like a victim, not like someone in pain, but like something ancient had awakened in her chest and wanted out. The kind of scream that stops the world for a second. "Please," she gasped, her voice cracking like shattered glass. "It's moving. It's not mine. Get it out." I froze. Behind her, the old bioscanner flickered wildly. Numbers jittered, red lights flashed. Then a single line appeared. Hybrid signature detected, unknown class. I thought I'd seen monsters. I thought I knew what horror looked like. But in that moment, staring into her eyes, I realized something else entirely. She wasn't a victim. She wasn't a failed experiment. She was the seed of something none of us were ready for. She stopped screaming. But the silence that followed somehow felt louder. Her breath caught in her throat, sharp, uneven. She collapsed back onto the table, trembling, eyes wide, lips slightly parted. There was something in her expression I hadn't seen before. Not pain, not fear, recognition. She knew what was happening to her, and that terrified me more than any unknown. I moved quickly, grabbing the old med scanner from the shelf above. The screen flickered to life, dust clinging to its cracked edges. I pressed it gently to her abdomen and waited. The scan took only seconds, but what it showed felt like eternity. 2 heartbeats. One large, one impossibly small. But it wasn't the numbers that made my hands shake. It was the 3rd line glowing in soft amber. Genetic merge. Human, Xenos, Class 7, stability, unknown. I stared at it. I had never authorized an experiment like this. I wasn't even sure such a pairing was biologically possible. And yet, there it was. Proof. Alive. Growing inside her. Voice lowers, more internal. I remember thinking, how the hell could this have happened? Then I remembered something worse. This wasn't an accident. Her hand grabbed mine. Her skin was hot fevered, but her grip was steady. She pulled me down to her eye level, her voice barely above a whisper. "Pendila, you need to leave, now, before it becomes aware." My heart skipped. "Kevin," voiceover. "Aware?" I asked. "You mean it's conscious?" She didn't answer. Just looked at me, like she'd already buried the answer years ago. I sat back, trying to breathe through the storm in my chest. What the hell had they put inside her? What had I helped survive? She was fading again, sweating, shivering, the body trying to reject what the mind couldn't name. But she held on. And then she said something I'll never forget. "Pendila, They told me I'd be useful, even after death. That's what Project Merge was for, to breed obedience, to forge new weapons out of wombs and war. And suddenly, it clicked. They didn't want to destroy her. They wanted her to carry something they could never build on their own. I stood there, a man with blood on his hands and no clue what to do with it. But one thing was clear. Whatever was growing inside her wasn't just alive. It was learning. And it knew I was here. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did she. She lay curled beneath the emergency thermal wrap, eyes half closed but never truly resting. Every few minutes, a tremor would roll through her body, like her very cells were warring against themselves. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the wind had changed. It wasn't just a shift in weather, it was instinct. The kind you only get after running through enough battlefields to know when death is on your heels. They were coming. Not to save her. Not to silence her. To reclaim her. I checked the scanner, again signal quiet. But too quiet. That's what Helion did when they wanted you to relax. Right before the door exploded inward. Voice lowers. I've lived through orbital strikes, extraction teams, assassin drones that whisper as they kill. But this felt different. Like the calm before the verdict drops. I opened the cabinet and reached under the false panel. 2 pistols, a field med kit, 1 half-charged energy cell. Not enough. He breathes. But maybe enough to buy time. Behind me, she stirred. Pendila. Weak. They're close. I turned. She wasn't guessing. Her skin had shifted tone pale green, fading to silver along her arms. It was her nervous system reacting before her thoughts could. Her body felt the threat before she did. Kevin, voiceover. How many? Pendila, flat. 3. No 4. One of them's enhanced. I cursed under my breath. I'd seen enhanced Helion trackers before. Once. Back on Eridos Prime. It took 3 Marines to put one down. Only one walked away missing both arms. We didn't have 3 Marines. We had me. And her. And whatever was growing inside her that made even them nervous enough to come in quietly. I pulled her gently to her feet. She hissed in pain, but didn't fall. Her eyes met mine clear now, not fogged by agony. Pendila. If they take me, they won't kill me. Kevin. I know. Pendila. They'll take the child, strip it apart, reprogram it, make more. I nodded once. Then I made a decision I hadn't planned on making that day. Voiceover. I'd killed for money. I'd fought for pride. But this time, I'd fight for something different. To make sure she stayed free. To make sure that, whatever this child was, it got to choose. The door creaked soft. Too soft. Movement in the shadows. No words, no countdown. The hunt had begun. Outside, the dark had thickened. No more rain. Just wind sharp and cold as a blade slipping through the cracks in the brick walls. I sat by the shattered window, eyes locked on the shadows moving across the far edge of the lot. Pendila lay behind me, her breathing fast, uneven. She hadn't said a word, but I knew she felt it too. They were here. Not with an explosion. Not with flashing lights or sirens. Number. When Helion came to collect a living asset, they came with silence. No noise, no mistakes, no survivors. I heard the first footsteps at 2:17 a.m. Not heavy, but precise. Like whoever was walking had done this 1,000 times before and never failed. A shadow moved along the outer wall. Then another. Then a third larger, hunched, with sensory gear stitched into its spine. I knew what I was seeing. Narrating low. One of them was enhanced. Mark 6 tracker unit. I'd seen one before. Took 3 soldiers to take it down. Only one walked away, and he didn't walk far. I inhaled. Slid the charge cell into my sidearm. 26% power left. Not enough to win, but maybe. Enough to scramble their formation. Pendila was on her feet now, no longer trembling. Something had shifted. Her eyes no longer fogged, with pain shown sharp. Focused. I didn't know if it was survival instinct or something else taking over inside her. Pendila, softly. They won't speak. They never do. Kevin, can they sense you? Pendila, not just my signal, my thoughts. I nodded once. There was no time left for fear, only for action. They came in from the roof. Glass shattered. A high-pitched screech ripped through the silence, then flashbang light drowned the room. I shoved her to the ground and fired. 2 shots. One figure down. Another blurred past a rusted beam. Smoke curled up from where plasma had scorched wet steel. And in the middle of that chaos, she started to glow. Not with fear, not from pain. Her skin lit with a soft, blue-silver radiance like moonlight trapped under flesh. And then the big one landed. It crashed down on reinforced limbs, helmet spinning, thermal scanners locking straight onto her. Pendila, lower voice, almost not hers. I'm not going back. She raised her hand. A wave pulsed outward, a raw, concussive force that slammed into all 3 attackers. One hit a steel pillar. I heard bones snap. I froze. She was still glowing. Her eyes found mine, gentle but unfamiliar. Kevin, voiceover. She wasn't just Pendila anymore. Whatever was inside had begun to show itself. And I wasn't sure it would ever stop. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and blood. Smoke curled from the ceiling. The last of the Helion hunters lay broken on the ground, their armor sparking, lifeless. Pendila stood in the center of the room, glowing faintly. Her chest rose and fell with every breath, steady but strained. That soft light under her skin flickered less like something alive and more like something waking up. I walked toward her slowly. Each step felt like a question I wasn't sure I wanted answered. Voiceover quiet. I'd seen beings lose themselves to war, to trauma, to rage. But this wasn't that. This felt like transformation. She turned to face me, eyes unreadable. No fury, no tears. Just silence. Her voice, when it came, was softer than I expected, almost fragile. Pendila, they'll send more. Kevin, I know. Pendila, and if they fail, they'll try something worse. She looked down, placed a trembling hand over her stomach. Pendila, I can feel it now, not just inside me, around me. Like it's not waiting to be born, it's waiting to become. I didn't speak. I couldn't. Because every part of me wanted to scream run, and yet my feet wouldn't move. She stepped closer. The glow dimmed. Her skin, her voice, human again. Or maybe just choosing to seem so. Pendila, you could leave. Go now. Pretend none of this ever happened. I shook my head. Slowly. Kevin. And what? Spend the rest of my life wondering if I left you to fight this alone? Pendila, you might live longer. Kevin, quiet smile. But I'd be empty. There it was. No speeches, no declarations. Just truth. Raw, simple, heavy. She reached out, took my hand in hers. Voiceover. Her fingers were cold. Her pulse was irregular. Not like mine, not like anything I'd felt before. And yet, in that moment, I wasn't holding a weapon, or a carrier, or a ticking biological anomaly. I was holding her. Kevin, softly, tell me what you want me to do. Pendila, I want you to stay, even if I stop being me. And there it was. The choice. Voiceover. She gave me the one thing Helion never did. A choice. Not in war. Not in protocol. In something real. Love, maybe. Or the last gasp of it before everything changes. I nodded once. Kevin whispers, then I stay. She closed her eyes, leaned her head against my chest. The glow returned, warmer now. And beneath my hand, I felt a second heartbeat. But it wasn't just alive. It was aware. And it was listening. Her body wasn't hers anymore. Not entirely. She slept in fragments now. 10 seconds here. 2 minutes there. Each breath uneven, as if her lungs had to be reminded to keep working. I stayed beside her. Not because I had answers, but because no one else would. She twitched in her sleep, limbs jerking like marionette strings pulled by invisible hands. And sometimes she'd whisper names I'd never heard. places I'd never been. Words in a language not of her kind or mine. Voiceover. I once asked her who she saw when her eyes rolled back like that. She didn't know. Or maybe she didn't want to tell me. I studied the scars on her arms, tiny, clean incisions left by Helion's experiments. But new ones were forming now, from inside. Thin, glowing lines traced along her collarbones and ribs like circuits growing beneath her skin. Pendila, whispering, "It's speaking." Kevin. To you? Pendila. Through me. I didn't ask how. Some things are worse when said aloud. She touched her stomach again, not gently, like she was afraid it might bite back. Pendila. It doesn't feel like a child anymore. Not even like me. It's looking at you through me. The hair on my neck stood on end. Voiceover. For the first time, I felt seen, but not by her. That night, I tried to sleep. Didn't last long. I woke to her standing by the window, completely still. Moonlight brushed her silhouette. Her back was to me, her hands covered in blood. Not hers. Mine. Kevin, startled. Pendila. She turned slowly, like a puppet on lagging strings. Her eyes glowed faint white, unfocused, empty. She spoke, but the voice wasn't hers. The entity, through her. You care for the vessel. That is inefficient. I reached for my weapon, then froze. Not out of fear, out of sorrow. Because even through that voice, that glare, that unnatural stillness, I saw her. She was still in there. Somewhere. Trapped. Kevin, low, steady. If you can hear me, Pendila, fight it. I know you're still in there. Her face twitched. One blink. Two. Then her knees buckled. I caught her before she hit the ground. She was cold again, shaking violently, but her eyes, when they opened, were hers. Barely. Pendila, weak. It wanted to touch you, to see if you'd flinch. Kevin. And did I? Pendila, faint smile. Number. That scared it. Voiceover. I didn't know if that made me brave. Or a fool. But I held her tighter. Because the thing inside her was learning. Not just how to move, or speak, or think. It was learning how to love. And that terrified me most of all. Morning never came. Just a paler shade of darkness that slipped through the shattered skylight above. We hadn't moved all night. Pendila lay in my arms, her skin warm again, but only just. She slept without peace, her face twitching, eyes flickering beneath the lids, like she was trapped between dreams and someone else's thoughts. When she finally stirred, it wasn't with words. Just a breath. Shallow, careful. Pendila softly. It's listening, all the time, even when I sleep. Kevin. Then let it listen. Let it hear the truth. She didn't answer. But then, her expression changed. Slowly, her head turned toward me, and I knew before she opened her mouth. It wasn't her anymore. The entity, through Pendila. You fear the unknown, but I am not unknown. I am becoming. Its tone wasn't cruel. It was curious. Like a child watching its reflection for the first time, unsure whether to smile or scream. I forced myself to breathe. Kevin, calmly. What do you want? The voice was silent for a moment. Pendila's body perfectly still. Then, the entity. I want a name. That hit me harder than any weapon. A name. Not freedom. Not power. Not escape. Identity. Voiceover. It wasn't just growing. It was self-aware. And now, it wanted to be known. Kevin. Why a name? The entity. Because she has one, and so do you. She has memories. I only have echoes. I want meaning. Pendila's hands trembled, even as her face remained locked in the entity's trance. I could feel her pulse race beneath my fingertips. Kevin, I don't name things I don't understand. The entity, then understand me. A flicker. Pendila's lips parted. Her voice cracked mid-syllable as if she were fighting from within. Pendila barely audible. Don't give it what it wants. I looked into her eyes, and for a moment, both of them were there. The one I loved. And the thing that wore her voiceover, I didn't know if it could feel love, or if it simply mimicked what it thought love looked like. But then it leaned forward. Pendila's mouth opened, and in a voice that was neither hers nor mine, the entity, call me, promise. The room went still. Even the wind outside seemed to hesitate. Voiceover. I don't know why it chose that word. Maybe because it heard us speak it in dreams. Or maybe because it knew. A promise is the one thing that binds humans and breaks them. Pendila collapsed again, breath shallow, but she was back, sweating, pale, alive. Kevin whispers, promise, what are you becoming? No answer came, but I knew the next time it spoke, it wouldn't ask. It would demand. The signal wasn't silent anymore. Somewhere during the night, maybe during Promise's last whisper, it had pulsed. Just once. But that was enough. Helion didn't need loud. They just needed confirmation. By the time the sun tried to rise behind ash-colored clouds, we could already hear them. The hum of dropships. The grinding of exo-armor along pavement. The silence of men trained to kill without sound. Voiceover. We were no longer fugitives. We were targets. And they weren't coming to capture her this time. I pulled open the floor hatch, grabbed what few weapons we had left. Pendila stood beside me, her face pale, arms glowing faintly like cracks in porcelain. The child inside her, the entity, was no longer just a presence. It was awake, and it was afraid. Pendila, it knows they're coming. It doesn't understand why. Kevin, because they made it to be a weapon. And now they're terrified it might choose not to be. She looked at me, quietly, for what felt like the last time. Pendila, softly, if I lose control, don't let them take it. Don't let them twist it. Kevin, you won't lose control. Pendila, you don't know that. Kevin, I don't need to. We kissed. Not for comfort. Not for hope. But because truths deserve witnesses. Then the walls shook. The first drone hit the roof with a metal scream. The second came through the side plasma, carving its way through stone like a blade through smoke. Pendila raised her arms too slow. I fired first, one down, a second. Then I took a hit across the shoulder, spinning me against the wall. Blood blurred my vision, but I saw her. Not Pendila, not Promise, both. Her glow erupted outward, but this time it wasn't defensive. It wasn't shielding. It was rage, pure, bright, beautiful. Voiceover, slow and raw. I'd seen war. I'd survived atrocities that haunted my sleep, but I had never seen anything fight like her. Not for survival, not for revenge, but for the right to choose what she would become. The blast knocked out the southern wall. Helion forces were thrown back, armor melted from within. Screams echoed, then silence. Then more came. Black-cloaked, heavier gear, orders to erase everything. Pendila collapsed. I crawled to her. Her eyes fluttered open, dim, the glow fading. Pendila, I can't stop it, not this time. Her stomach convulsed, pain tearing through her like lightning. Promise was pushing through. Not as an infant, not anymore. Pendila, it's coming. Voiceover, I didn't know what would be born. A savior, a destroyer, something in between. But I knew this. It would be free. The door blew inward. Dozens of soldiers. Guns, drones, commands screamed. I stood between them and her. Armed, bleeding, unafraid. Kevin, voice steady. You come any closer, and you'll never know what it could have been. Then it happened. The light swallowed the room. A sound like music twisted through metal, and from Pendila's chest, Promise rose. Not a creature, not a weapon, a presence, alive. And watching, Pendila lay motionless on the cold concrete. Her stomach no longer moved. No more light, no breath, only silence. I knelt beside her, hands stained with blood, clutching her shoulders like a man who had just lost the only reason he had left to keep fighting. Pendila, don't go, you promised me. But she didn't answer. Her body was still warm, but her gaze had already gone. And then a breath. Not mine, not hers. From within, a soft light emerged from her chest. It didn't explode, it didn't burn. It simply rose. Like the steady, peaceful breath of a being taking its very first inhale. From that light, Promise stepped forward. It wasn't a child. It wasn't a monster. Not alien. Not human. Something else. Voiceover. It didn't cry. It didn't scream. It looked, and in that gaze, there was something older than innocence. Promise stood in the rubble, staring at me. Not with fear. Not with anger. But with a question. Promise, why do they want me dead if they were the ones who made me? My throat tightened. Kevin, because you disobeyed. Because you learned how to love. Promise looked down at its hand stouching the blood on my chest. Pendila's blood. Promise, she didn't try to teach me love. She just loved. And let me see it. Outside, the hum of Helion dropships grew louder. They had found us. And this time, there would be no witnesses. Only cleanup. I stepped in front of Promise. Wounded, unarmed, but unwilling to run. Kevin, if you run, you'll survive. But you'll never be free. If you fight, don't fight for her. Fight for you. Promise raised its head slowly. One drop fell from its eye. Not a tear. A memory. Promise, softly. I won't kill. I won't hide. I will show them what they tried to erase. It stepped outside alone. No shield. No armor. The soldiers locked on target. Dozens of weapons raised. Promise lifted one hand and placed it gently on the chest of the lead soldier. No explosion. No blood. Just memory. A flood of feeling tore through the Helion ranks. Fear, guilt, grief. Pendila's last heartbeat. Her love shared without asking. They didn't fall from gunfire. They fell to the weight of their own humanity. Voiceover. It wasn't power that brought them down. It was empathy. And that's what made us dangerous. And now, it's what saved us. Asterisk. Promise didn't disappear. It simply walked away. No trail. No smoke. Only silence and a choice. A being born from hatred. Who chose to exist through love? She's no longer here, but what she left behind will never fade. A being born from hatred, but who chose to love instead of destroy. No one knows where Promise went, but those who once tried to control it no longer dare to chase. Because they know, if something born of war can learn to love, it could change the galaxy. And me, I'm still here. Not to retell the past, but to ask the future, if it returns, what will we choose? Somewhere out there, beings are watching us. Just like Promise once watched Pendila. Not to judge, but to see if we're still worthy of being called the species that loves. This isn't an ending. It's simply the last time I saw them, before everything changed. So if you too believe this world hasn't said everything it needs to, stay with us, here on Alien Chronicles. Because the stories yet to come will make you question everything you thought it meant to be human.